5 books and counting. The Tales from the Omni Vault continues to expand as a universe. Go ahead and check the links down in the description to get your copies today. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni Viewer, and this is just a thought I had about where the MonsterVerse could go moving forward from Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. As of this video's posting, no one has actually seen that movie yet, so we don't know if it's good or bad, we don't know if it did well or poorly, we don't know if it's ensured the future of the franchise or marked its end. I'm just speculating here about what could happen afterward, if it does well and if it's well received. See, the reason I'm thinking about this is because, as many have pointed out, even those who like the MonsterVerse, it isn't exactly as expansive as other shared universes, especially shared cinematic universes have been. It's predominantly focused on two monsters, Godzilla and Kong. We've had 2 solo Godzilla movies, a solo Kong movie, and now we're coming up on 2 crossovers with Godzilla and Kong. We've also had a solo Kong series that Kong was barely in and I don't really think is going to be remembered fondly. And we had a Monarch series that has Godzilla in it, but it wasn't really a Godzilla series. So it's branching out a tiny bit, but it's still largely relying on Godzilla and Kong to draw people in. So how can we move beyond that? How can we actually get a movie that, even if it does feature these two, doesn't necessarily rely on them to draw people in, and maybe even manage to put the spotlight on a new monster? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We know for certain that Legendary and the people who are working on the MonsterVerse can come up with new monsters, because pretty much every single entry up to this point has had new monsters. The thing is, being new, they don't necessarily have the same kind of draw as the actual named legacy monsters. Some of them have names that certainly hearken to a legacy, like Titanus Behemoth, for example. Everybody knows the name Behemoth. At the same time, though, the MonsterVerse isn't necessarily in a position at this point where it would be able to put forward an obscure, unknown monster and have it headline a movie. If it were Marvel or DC, maybe, because the brand recognition of Marvel and DC is much bigger. But the MonsterVerse, it's not quite there yet. Plus, Hollywood studios are averse to taking risks anyway, and putting all of their chips on a brand new, never-before-seen monster would be considered a huge risk. Now, there are plenty of named monsters that could be brought in. Some of them are ones they'd have to get the license for if they sought them out. Others are ones they could easily get from Toho, like there are rumors at this point of Mothra coming back for Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. They're not confirmed yet. There do seem to be some tantalizing hints that it'll happen. And if that movie does well, there might be a chance that a Mothra solo movie might go forward. I actually have an interesting idea of how you could do a Mothra-Rodan team-up that would redeem Rodan in this universe while also giving Mothra more of the spotlight. But again, that could still be considered something of a risk, even though those are legacy monsters we're talking about. Because sure, fans like us would go to see a Mothra movie, but would general audiences? Mothra's known, yes, but as known as these two? That's a little harder to discern. And of course, you could say the same thing about any other named monster. Gamera, of course, is a monster a lot of us would love to see enter the MonsterVerse, but, well, that would require some kind of a deal with Kadokawa, who currently owns the rights, and Toho's always been kind of iffy about whether or not they want that crossover to happen. They got close with that mobile game thing that tied in with Gamera Rebirth, and I would like to believe that's a step in the right direction, but is it actually a sign of what's to come? Well, you can't necessarily count on that. So you can see how this gets a little tricky. If the MonsterVerse is going to try branching out and do a movie that doesn't feature one of these two guys, They've got to find a monster to headline it that is a new monster that hasn't really headlined this kind of movie before and might even be a brand new concept in total, but also is something familiar that people would go to see because of the brand name recognition, and that's also how you would probably get it greenlit by the studio. Yeah, you can understand why that's not easy. But I think I have a solution. I do know of a monster that actually fits into both of those categories. It's the one point on the Venn diagram where those two completely different circles intersect. And it's a monster I've suggested before. On top of that, it's also a monster that has been hinted at existing in the MonsterVerse already. We just haven't actually seen it yet. I speak naturally of the Loch Ness Monster, Nessie herself. Yes, I think this would be a good way for the MonsterVerse to try branching out. On the one hand, Nessie is a recognizable monster. Whether you think the actual Loch Ness Monster is real or not, the fact remains everybody knows what the Loch Ness Monster is, or could be. It's a recognizable thing, and a recognizable thing that you don't have to pay for the rights to. Nessie exists in the public domain because it's not a trademarkable thing. At the same time, though, there haven't really been that many Nessie movies in theaters. There have been some. In fact, there are quite a few Loch Ness Monster movies out there, but the vast majority of them are really low-budget, cheesy direct-to-video stuff, which isn't necessarily considered, well, it's not on the same level as a theatrical film, let me tell you. If memory serves, the last movie to feature the Loch Ness Monster that got released in theaters, at least over here in America, was Incident at Loch Ness, which is a good movie. I actually reviewed it. I'll post a link at the end of the video for you to check that out if you haven't already. But here's the thing, that movie was released back in 2004. So exactly 20 years ago, and we haven't gotten a high-profile, big-budget Nessie movie since. Not that that movie was especially big-budget, mind you, but it had more of a budget than stuff like the recent in-name-only remake of the Loch Ness Horror, which, yes, I have seen. There will be a video at some point. And as mentioned, the Loch Ness Monster has been hinted at already existing in the MonsterVerse. In King of the Monsters and on the Monarch Sciences website, one of the Monarch outposts listed on the map was one right in northern Scotland, said to house a creature called Titanus Leviathan. Now, Leviathan is a reference to a biblical sea monster. So, water monster in Scotland being monitored by cryptozoologists, yeah, that's Nessie. So all Legendary would have to do is just commit to it. They could be the ones that bring the Loch Ness Monster back into theaters in a big-budget kaiju movie. And that would actually put them in a position to do something that Hammer and Toho couldn't do put together. You may recall there was supposed to be a collaboration between those two studios to make a Nessie movie, but it completely fell through. And the original plans for what Nessie would have looked like were instead repurposed and used as the base to make a creature for Princess from the Moon. Ergo, my proposal is that Nessie be considered for a future MonsterVerse movie. I do have some ideas of how that could happen, but yeah, I'm not going to give those away for free. If anyone at Legendary is watching this and they want to know, well, you know where to find me. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there for consideration. I think the Loch Ness Monster falls into that sweet spot of being something new that we really haven't seen much in theaters, but also something that would be recognizable. And hey, eventually you would be able to cross them over with either of these two. Godzilla versus Nessie, anyone? Come on, people would turn out to see that. Anyway, like I said, just putting that out there, and we will see what comes of it, if indeed anything comes of it. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. Thank you all for watching. Now be sure to head down to the description to check us out on other platforms, as well as find links to the 5 current books in the Tales from the Omni Vault universe. Again, thank you all, and we'll see you next time.